Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I was different. I never fit in with other kids. I was the odd one out, and I became the target of bullies. It started with teasing and name-calling, but it soon turned physical. In 7th grade, I was walking home from school when a group of older kids came up to me and started pushing me around. They called me names and made fun of my clothes. Then they took it further. One of the boys pushed me to the ground, and the others kicked me. I was scared and didn't know what to do. I tried to get up and run, but they knocked me down. Eventually, they got bored and left me lying in the dirt. After that, I became more of a target. The bullies enjoyed tormenting me whenever they could. I started skipping school and avoiding people. I didn't want to be around anyone who would hurt me. But one day, something inside me snapped. I was tired of living in fear and sick of being the victim. I needed to take matters into my own hands. I started going to self-defense classes at the local community center. It was scary at first, but I realized I was stronger than I thought. I learned how to fight back and defend myself, and I gained confidence. As I got older, I worked out regularly and focused on my fitness. I wanted to be in good shape so I could protect myself if needed. Years went by and I thought I had left my bullying past behind. But one night, everything came back. I was at a party with friends when I saw them. The bullies? They were there, laughing and drinking, acting like nothing had happened. I felt angry and frustrated. I couldn't believe they were still out there, living their lives as if they had never hurt me. I tried to ignore them, but they kept staring at me, smirking and whispering to each other. I knew something was brewing, and I felt uneasy. One of the guys walked over to me and grabbed my arm. He told me it had been a long time since he'd seen me. I tried to pull away, but he tightened his grip. I told him to let go of me. He laughed and asked what I was going to do about it, if I would cry and run away like before. I was angry, and I knew I had to do something. I took a breath and looked him in the eye. I told him I wasn't going to run away this time. He laughed again, but I saw doubt in his eyes. He knew something was different about me, and he didn't like it. He told his friends they should leave, but I wasn't letting them go easily. I followed them out of the party and onto the street. I called out that I was tired of being afraid of them. They turned around, surprised. One asked what I was talking about. I told them I meant all the times they bullied me and made me feel worthless. I said I was done with that, done being afraid of them. They looked at me like they couldn't believe what I was saying. I could see uncertainty in their eyes, and it made me feel powerful. One tried to sound tough, saying they could still take me down. I smirked and asked if they wanted to try. Then they came at me, fists flying. But I was ready. I had trained for years to defend myself, and I wouldn't let them hurt me again. It wasn't the wisest choice to face a group of bullies at once, and I won't say I knocked them all out, but I did damage considering the circumstances. The first guy came at me with a wild punch that I dodged before hitting his stomach. He doubled over, not expecting resistance. The second guy hesitated after seeing his friend go down, which gave me time to kick his knee. The third guy was bigger and managed to grab me from behind, but self-defense classes had taught me what to do. I slammed my heel on his foot and elbowed him in the ribs. His shocked gasp was satisfying. I left that night with bruises, but they left with worse. When it ended, they were on the ground, groaning and holding their injuries. I stood over them feeling triumphant. I warned them that if I ever saw them again, I wouldn't hesitate to do the same thing. They scrambled to their feet and ran away. I watched them go, feeling satisfied in a way I never had before. The next day, I was sore and had a split lip, but I kept smiling. Word spread quickly through our town. People I barely knew talked to me about it. A friend asked if I really took on those 3 jerks alone, and I said they hadn't given me much choice. Another friend said they heard the bullies ran away crying. Even people who had watched me get bullied years ago suddenly wanted to be my friend. I got messages from others who had been bullied by the same group. One text thanked me for standing up to them, noting no one had ever done that before. Over the next weeks, I noticed people treated me differently. It wasn't just respect. It was like they finally saw me as a real person. The bullies avoided me after that. Sometimes I'd catch one looking at me from across a room, but they'd look away when our eyes met. I heard they told everyone they let me win, or didn't want to hurt a girl, but nobody believed them. Their reputation was damaged, while mine was stronger. The best part wasn't the new friends or respect. It was knowing I had faced my biggest fear and overcome it. I no longer jumped when someone approached unexpectedly or avoided places in town. I walked with my head high. My first job after college turned into a nightmare. Moving to America on a work visa was stressful enough, but what waited for me at that manufacturing facility outside a major New Jersey city was worse than I expected. When I first arrived, I was excited to prove myself. I had worked hard through college, earning top grades and developing skills that impressed the executive management team during my interview. They were thrilled to have me on board, especially considering my knowledge in areas the department needed help with. My parents back home were proud. They had sent me to the best schools they could afford, and now I was working in America. I didn't want to let them down, which made what happened hard to handle. From my first week, I noticed something off about my lead colleague. I'll just call him the lead. At first, it was just uncomfortable looks or sudden silences when I walked into the break room. But then I heard him loudly complaining about Mexican immigrants stealing jobs while looking at me from across the office. I'm not Mexican, but I knew what was happening. I was foreign, different, and better at the job than he was. The executive team had even pointed this out during a department meeting, saying they looked forward to seeing what fresh ideas I could bring to their technical challenges. The lead's face turned red that day. Soon, the joke started. The lead told me I should watch Jeff Dunham, saying I'd love his puppet Ahmed the Terrorist because it would remind me of my people. When I said I didn't watch much comedy because I was busy settling in, he insisted that the puppet and I had a lot in common, laughing while I forced a smile. I tried to focus on learning what I could from him while ignoring the hostile comments. I never went to human resources because I was scared of losing my work visa. Finding another employer willing to sponsor me would be difficult and expensive, and I liked the actual work I was doing, so I bottled up my anger and took it home every night, often venting to my partner who saw my growing frustration. My partner would suggest that I report him, but I would refuse, saying I couldn't risk deportation since we had built a life here. Then came the breaking point. I was named lead on a major project that the executives were watching closely. The lead was a key participant, but when our first planning meeting started, he was missing. After waiting 15 minutes, I walked to his cubicle and found him browsing the internet. I told him that everyone was waiting in the conference room and asked if he could join us, saying we needed his input on the production timeline. He told me he didn't want to and told me to get out of his face. I tried to stay calm. I told him how important the meeting was and that we couldn't move forward without his help, saying it wouldn't take long. That's when he told me to go back to my country. My heart started racing, but I thought I misheard. When I asked him to repeat what he'd said, he said again, clearly, that I should go back to my country. That was it. All those months of swallowing my pride, trying to be professional, protecting my visa status, none of it mattered anymore. I walked straight to the office of the Vice President of Human Resources. The VP listened to my story with a concerned look that quickly turned patronizing. She told me the lead used to be much worse and had made progress, suggesting I shouldn't let it bother me. I asked her if she had a daughter, and then asked if I were an abuser who used to abuse her daughter weekly, but now only did so monthly. Would she consider that progress deserving of compassion? Her face showed she was taken aback by my comparison. I told her that some things are black and white without gray areas, and what the lead said was wrong. Their solution? They called in a therapist to have us work together to see if our interactions trigger each other's emotions. It was absurd. Like they were suggesting we were equally at fault. A few weeks later, the lead made another xenophobic remark that was so bad, I won't repeat it. I went straight to my boss, who sighed before saying he thought I was overreacting and that the lead was just old school. I told him, if by Thursday morning the lead wasn't fired, I would quit, but not before going to the CEO's office to explain what had been happening. I warned him that if I quit, he would lose his job too. My boss looked stunned, then angry. He told me I was being a jerk, saying he couldn't fire the lead because he had severe arthritis. I took the day off without telling anyone. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I thought about what I had just done. I might have just ended my time in America, my visa, my future, everything I had worked for. By Thursday morning, they had walked the lead out of the building. But I wasn't done. I requested a meeting with the CEO and laid out everything: the harassment, the HRVP's dismissive attitude, my boss's protection of the lead. I was shaking so badly in the CEO's office that I could barely hold my notebook. But I got through it all, showing documentation of incidents, dates, times, and witnesses. Within 2 weeks, both the HRVP and my boss were also fired. I'm still at the company 3 years later. I've been promoted twice, and my work visa was converted to a green card application with the company's full support. I was in the middle of a healthcare fraud scheme. In 2014, I started working at a home health agency. The owner, I'll call her boss, took a liking to me right away. She had me doing tasks beyond my job description, but I didn't mind. I was learning a lot, and none of it involved direct patient care, which would have been outside my qualifications as a massage therapist. When I started, there was a licensed vocational nurse in the office. We got along well and became work buddies. Sometimes patients would come to her office, and she'd shut the door while admitting them. I wasn't comfortable with this setup. A registered nurse should be doing admissions, but at least she was a nurse with proper credentials. In 2015, boss sent my nurse friend out into the field, leaving me alone in the office. Not long after, boss caught me during my break with an unusual request. Boss asked me to help her with a patient in my office. She wanted me to take his vitals, write down all his medications, and put him in the system. I questioned if she was trying to get me to admit the patient. I told her this was outside my scope of practice as a massage therapist and could result in me losing my license or going to jail. Boss tried to flatter me by saying I had the knowledge and experience to handle it. When flattery didn't work, she offered me a $50 bonus for each admission I completed. I asked how I was supposed to determine diagnoses without a doctor's report. She suggested I should just Google the medications to see what they were prescribed for and use that information for the diagnosis. Her suggestion was illegal. I couldn't refuse and lose my job, but I also couldn't keep doing something unethical and illegal. I did it that one time, but I knew I had to outsmart her, or I'd be stuck doing illegal admissions forever and end up with legal problems for $50 per admission. I decided to deliberately make an error. The patient mentioned he was taking gabapentin. I knew this medication could be prescribed for multiple reasons, usually pain or anxiety. I put down seizure disorder as the diagnosis, which is the rarest reason it's prescribed for. When boss checked what I had entered, she lost it. She yelled that gabapentin was for neuropathy. I told her the medication has multiple uses, and seizure codes pay more than neuropathy ones, according to the coding guide. I added that I knew making more money was important to her. I decided to really push my point. I told her I had noticed more than half our patients were taking gabapentin, so I had changed all their diagnoses to seizure disorder and had already sent the assessments to the state. I hadn't actually done that. She screamed about how many additional development requests she was going to get. She said it would take forever because someone would have to scan every record and submit them to Medicare, and they wouldn't pay her. I shrugged and estimated it would probably be around 50 records if the numbers added up. She said she would never ask me to do an admission again and wanted her $50 back. I gave a fake apology while laughing as I walked away. A month later, I heard the state health department had shown up for a surprise audit. Someone had called in a tip about improper admissions procedures. Boss suddenly became careful about following proper protocols. I started looking for another job right away. I had won that battle, but it was only a matter of time before she found another way to cut corners and put me in legal jeopardy. 3 weeks later, I got a position at a legitimate physical therapy clinic where my massage therapy skills were used and appreciated. A deliberately botched diagnosis form saved my license and my freedom. I value focus and concentration in academic settings. As a junior at a small liberal arts college, I know how important a good study environment is. Most of my peers understand this too, which is why we keep a respectful atmosphere in our labs and classes. Last week, we had a skills test in my analytical chemistry lab that tested my patience. A skills test is when you have to perform a laboratory procedure in a specific time. We'd practiced before, but this time we were graded on accuracy for a big part of our grade. This test required making precise measurements and counting individual drops one by one, sometimes reaching into the 90s, over and over. It's tedious and requires intense concentration. Most people in the lab were quietly focused on their work. Most people except for one classmate. This classmate is part of a trio of girls who are always loud in lab. On test day, the usual loudest one was working quietly like the rest of us, but the other two remained loud, with one of them, let's call her Karen, being the loudest. Karen wasn't just loud, she was loud about inappropriate topics. She was shouting across the room about shopping for thongs, in a small lab, with a professor nearby. She even tried to get her friend to play music, which our instructor stopped. I asked Karen if she could keep it down, explaining that we were trying to count drops. Karen said she would try to be quieter. She stayed quiet for about 2 minutes before starting again, even louder than before. I said it was unbelievable. The experience was frustrating. Imagine trying to count dozens of drops with background noise during a lab that's supposed to be quiet so everyone can focus. I left with a headache and feeling like I hadn't done my best work because of the distraction. The next day, I had a psychology class that Karen is also in. She sits where I can see her laptop screen, and during the entire class she didn't pay attention. She kept switching between her phone and working on an assignment for another class. This lecture was more note-heavy than usual. After class, Karen asked if I could send her pictures of my notes, saying she had another assignment she'd forgotten about and had to do during class. I told her I could because I couldn't think of a good reason to refuse, but I was still irritated from the lab. This was my chance for revenge. She could have my notes, but she would have to work for them. I told her to give me a few minutes to take photos. While walking to my dorm, I thought of ways to make my notes harder to read. I had an idea. I could take pictures using the 0.5x magnification on my camera and then crop the photo to make it look normal, but blurrier. I spent 15 minutes testing the perfect distance for the camera. I wanted the words to be readable but not easy. I aimed for enough blur that she would need to zoom in on almost every word to figure out what was written. After finding the right distance, I took photos of all 6 pages of my notes. They looked normal at first, but when you tried to read them, it became a frustrating exercise. I sent the pictures to Karen with a message saying, "Here were the notes," apologizing for my handwriting and hoping they would help. Karen texted back thanking me and calling me a lifesaver. An hour later, Karen texted saying she was having trouble reading the notes and asked if I could send clearer pictures. I replied they looked fine on my end and suggested she download them in full resolution. Karen said she had, but they were still blurry. I said maybe my phone camera wasn't good. When Karen asked if I could type up my notes, I said I had too much work and suggested she ask someone else. I felt satisfied knowing Karen was experiencing the same frustration trying to read my notes as I have felt trying to count drops over her noise. I heard later that she asked 3 different people for notes before getting readable ones. The next lab session was quieter. Karen looked at me a few times but didn't say anything. I don't know if she connected her loud behavior with my blurry notes, but I think she learned about consideration that day. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.